we would want to avoid these things. And there is much in the scriptures that direct us what we should do and how we should avoid these things. But there are other things that we want to avoid as well, that we kind of bridge that gap between morally and mentally. And that is things like smoking or alcohol or drug abuse. Many of these, taking these things, can lead to all sorts of horrible diseases. And we probably know people who have suffered over time as a result of participating in that habit. So we know the dangers that are attached to it. And there are so many addictive behaviours that really can be harmful to us. And how do we contend with that as Christians? How do we contend with that for us wanting to be clean and holy before Jehovah? Well, in Matthew chapter 22, and verse 7, you'll notice what it is that we need to do. Sorry, Matthew 22, verse 37. It says, he said to him, you must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart and with your whole soul and with your whole mind. So every element of who we are should be about loving Jehovah in that way. The scriptures tell us quite clearly, if you just move forward for a moment to the book of 2 Corinthians, and this is a really interesting expression that's made here. 2 Corinthians chapter 7. And it's verse 1. Just notice this. It says, therefore, since we have these promises, beloved ones, let us cleanse ourselves of every defilement of flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. So that ties in with what we just read in Matthew. But you notice the first expression there. It says, therefore, since we have these promises. What promises? Well, look at the previous two verses. It says, therefore get out from among them and separate yourselves, says Jehovah, and quit touching the unclean thing, and I will take you in. And I will become a father to you, and you will become sons and daughters to me, says Jehovah the Almighty. So, if we do our utmost to prove ourselves mentally, morally, physically clean, the benefits to us are highlighted here. It says that Jehovah will be like a father to us. We will be sons and daughters to Jehovah. Now, what a privilege to be able to be called like that by Jehovah. And so we really want to do our utmost from our heart, soul, and mind to serve Jehovah God. Now, some people have tried to do that, and they're not very successful. There was an experience of a man who was a doctor in India. I'm not going to tell you his name because it would be too difficult for me. But he was a smoker. And he was a smoker for 38 years. Now, as a practitioner, a doctor, he would tell his patients and his friends the dangers of smoking. And this would be the advice that he would give to his patients in order for them to remove some kind of problem in their lives and to be healthy. And yet, while he did all of these things, he couldn't make the change himself. He said he had tried to do it half a dozen times, but every time he did it, he failed. And the only thing that helped him was having a Bible study. He was able to recognize his position before God. And then he had a real reason for wanting to be clean. He wanted his body to be clean of what he'd been taking in. And he knew that if he did these things, then he would feel better in his head, but he would also feel better in his body. And so it took him 38 years to get to that position. So sometimes we might work hard at something, we might not always succeed, but the point is never to give up. And clearly, with Jehovah's help, we can accomplish that objective. Another feature that we come across in connection with alcohol is the problems that it leaves you with. Now, we're not going to read all of this scripture, but if you just turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 23, and I'd like you just to look from verse 29 of Proverbs 23, right through to the end of the chapter there, up to verse 35. And just as you're browsing over those verses, I'm sure that you will be able to pick some of the things out that you're aware of that impacts upon people who are tied in with alcohol and struggle to release themselves from that. Basically, sleepless nights. The fact that their eyes can be a bit glazed over. And where does that lead them? They says it bites like a serpent and secretes poison like a viper. You'll see strange things. And like one lying at the top of a ship's mast, well, that maybe indicates nausea amongst other things. But some people really struggle with that. And we really need to be able to help them to realise the dangers that can be attached to that. Another way that mentally we want to think about being clean is the way that we speak. Now, because many of us work with associates in this world, the kind of language that is used is very colourful. I always used to remember when people used to use bad language in front of me, I would say I thought it was an ordinary one. And they would also present adjectives that replaced that. But it's something that we have to contend with. And people use that as everyday language. What does the Bible say about these things? It says, put obscene talk away from you. It's a work of the flesh. And uncleanness is included amongst that. Another element as well that obscene talk can lead to is disrespectful talk and even slander. And slander is hurtful talk intended to malign an individual. And it really is the sort of topic that we have to ask ourselves. Is the kind of speech that we're using, even when we're not using foul language, but perhaps disrespectful speech, is it true? Is it kind to repeat these things? Or should we share them with others? You've heard of the expression, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's a lie. Because words hurt. And if we use the wrong kind of words in the wrong place at the wrong time, we can damage individuals. We will also damage ourselves. Because the more we use such speech, then we become more conditioned. So we really have to avoid that. You might think, well, okay, he's talked about speech, he's talked about the things that can be degrading, like drink, drugs, or whatever. What happens if I have a relapse and I fall back into something like that? How should that make you feel? Do you feel a failure? That there's no point in going on? Well, maybe you do. But falling down isn't being a failure. It's failing to get up that makes you a failure. So we want to be individuals who, despite any difficulties that we might have in any of those areas, that we're prepared to get up and start again. And this experience is from a man in Italy who was born in Rome, and the life that he had was very poor. He lost his mother when he was just a very, very tiny boy, and he lived with his father, who didn't really care for them very much. He was very much streetwise. When he was 10, he had started stealing. When he was 12, he ran away from home. He would be picked up at the police headquarters by his father, but because life at home was violent and angry, he ran away at 14, started taking drugs, living on the street, used to break into cars, and that would be where he would spend the night. So you could say that he didn't have a very good upbringing. But then, of course, he get involved with criminal gangs, and ultimately he was known as a very serious criminal who was always armed with a gun. That was his life, and he carried on that for some time. He got to the stage where he would rob people's homes and eventually became a bank robber. And one day, when he was let out of prison, because he'd been in and out of prison on several occasions, he went to visit one of his aunts who, unbeknown to him, had started studying the Bible with two of his cousins. And this drew his attention. And in any way, he decided that he was going to go to the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses with them. But he was a bit wary, so he decided to sit at the door and keep his gun in his pocket. So he realised that what he was hearing was something quite different. He actually said, I thought I was on a different planet. That the changes that he could see that some of those people had made, he needed to make in order to benefit in this way. So he cleaned himself up, he got his hair cut, he stopped smoking, he stopped taking drugs, he got rid of his earrings, his language changed. For the first time in his life, he felt that he had some kind of control over what he was doing. One of his biggest challenges was when he went on the ministry from door to door. He was really frightened he was going to come across somebody that he'd previously beaten up or robbed. But he overcame that, and he continued to serve Jehovah God. He pioneered with his wife that he married in the congregation, and he now has a part-time cleaning banks, not robbing them. So he changed his life right round. And he would have failures, but he managed to overcome them, to get up and start all over again. So that's only one example from the Awake magazine, which looks at the Bible changes lives. And we can get good ideas as to how we might be able to assist others who might have similar difficulties. So whatever our circumstances, keep this in mind. It says, a person who is morally and physically clean might not be godly, but a godly person must be physically, morally, mentally, and spiritually clean. So that puts forward a challenge for us. So how do we do that? Well, are you the kind of person who picks up accents easily? So that if you go and spend a holiday for a week or 2 weeks with friends from Glasgow or Wales or Ireland or somewhere else foreign, do you come back with a different accent? Or you know somebody who does? My daughter is like that. She can take off anybody. She's really good at accents. But what are we like if we were in the company of other people, and because of our seeking to spend time with them or spend time in this world, do we pick up the kind of things that are going to drag us back down again and cause us to have an unnecessary relapse? Well, one of the ways that we can do that is highlighted for us in the book of James. And it's James chapter 1. James chapter 1. I'm just looking from verse 23. It says, "For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, This one is like a man looking at his own face in a mirror, where he looks at himself and he goes away and immediately forgets what sort of person he is. But the one who peers into the perfect law that belongs to freedom and continues in it has become not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, and he will be happy in what he does. So this is the solution to be spiritually clean, and also all these other elements that we've discussed. That if we use Jehovah's word as the benchmark and seek always to live up to that mark, then we will become not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. But did you notice the last comment in that section? It says that you will be happy when you do that. So we need to be careful about how we handle ourselves in this system. But one thing that is really good is that Jehovah has provided a helper for us to do that. He's given us the example of his son Jesus Christ, who, yes, was used as a ransom sacrifice. But if we focus on what Jesus did and seek to follow his example, then we can be viewed as individuals who are clean and holy before our God. The scriptures tell us in 2 Peter chapter 3 about what prospects we can have for the future. But have a look just to find out what it says in verse 14. It was talking about the new heavens and the new earth that are awaited. But in verse 14 it says, "Beloved ones, since you are awaiting these things, do your utmost to be found finally by him spotless and unblemished and in peace." Now you think, well, spotless, maybe that's easy to get rid of. My wife had a lovely pair of trousers that she bought, and we went into Edinburgh and we sat in the train and she got chewing gum on them. She wasn't very pleased. So we stuck the trousers in the freezer, and eventually with a very sharp knife we managed to get this gum off, and she was able to wash it, and she was really quite pleased that they're back to almost where they should have been. So spots can be removed. What about blemishes? Blemishes are deeper than spots, and sometimes it takes a lot more to remove blemishes. In fact, sometimes blemishes can't be removed. But we have to make sure that we do our utmost before Jehovah, so that we don't ever find ourselves that we would be making Jehovah ashamed to have us as one of his servants. And if we do that, then we can make sure that we will be clean before Jehovah. One of the other things that he helps us with is that he gives us the congregation, so that we can have a united brotherhood in a united bond of peace. And if we do that, we can all share together and be illuminators for the truth and the hope for the future that Jehovah gives us, and be recognized as his clean people.